Attention bobsled riders! You will soon be embarking on a thrilling podcast down the icy slopes of the Matterhorn, so please remain seated keeping your hands, arms, feet and legs inside the bobsled at all times. Auf Wiedersehen!
Welcome back, Yodelers. We are the Matterhorn Yodelers. Today I'm the host, Jackie, and my siblings,
Peter!
Jesus.
And today we have the big guns joining us today, Mother and Father Yodeler.
Hi.
Hi.
And today we're doing an interview with our parents.
Yeah, Bob Iger, he canceled on us, so
Yeah,
we
last
well,
minute.
let's who else can we get? Oh,
Well,
Mom,
I was second to Bob Iger.
You were second to Bob Iger.
He's not even the president anymore.
He's still in there for the rest of the year.
He's on the board of directors.
He's on the board, but he's not the president.
No. Well, he's got a little less time on us. That's why he had time for our show, which not anymore. But
We've got the best here,
we
too.
got our backup guns here.
So today we're going to go over kind of a different generation of Disney that none of us siblings have experienced, and kind of talk to our parents about how they experience Disney through their eyes and growing up. So, Peter, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, sure. So I had a question here. One was, because you guys were both born in the 60s. So at this time, Walt was still alive. I know, Mom, you weren't. Mom, you weren't quite that old, so you may not remember too much of him at all. But
No.
Dad, did you ever remember seeing him on television or have any?
I never saw him in person.
Not in person.
But on television, he was on every week on Sunday for The Wonderful World of Disney, or The Wonderful World of Color, which was probably what it was when I first started watching it. And he would introduce those, and he was like Uncle Walt in your living room every week. And probably the most poignant episode I remember, being very young, preschool, was when he passed away, and they announced that, as I recall, right before they may have announced it previously, but right before they showed The Wonderful World of Disney that night, they had, like, I believe his daughter's husband got on the TV and announced that Walt Disney was no longer with us, and that was impactful for me. Walt Disney was known well enough, even though I was, maybe 6 years old at the time, that this was a tragedy. This was my first facing death. I hadn't encountered the end of someone's life before Walt Disney, as far as I recalled. So yes, it was very impactful, and he was missed the episodes after, even though some reruns may have showed him. I knew it wasn't current, it wasn't live, it wasn't him there.
So did you see a difference from the time when he was hosting the show from the times when he no longer hosted?
Again, I think they used his introductions shortly after, and then those introductions went away, and it was more just the music, and then the movie of the week came on or whatever, and so it was there. You didn't get that personal introduction that you did before, and I think Eisner later on tried to bring that back, and I think to some extent,
Yes.
I think to some success he did that, and I kind of wish Iger would have gone ahead, although I know Eisner received some criticism for doing that no one could replace Walt, that kind of idea, but
for a generation that doesn't know that, like,
That
they grow
part,
up
or
with
experience those.
I kind of had that kind of same feeling when I watched. I was like, oh, okay, the president of Disney is speaking to us. He's sharing a special treat to us that he
Exactly.
didn't have to share with us, and I was like, this is great. I liked it. I felt like he was like an uncle, like you said, like Uncle Walt was.
exactly.
So I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it in the early 90s when he did that. Like when you mentioned that, I go, oh yeah, I remember when he introduced like Mighty Ducks to us on television.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, it was. It was fun to get that kind of behind the scenes look at it before you actually watched the finished project. It was a good, you know. They didn't have DVDs back then. You didn't get the extras or anything. That was your extra. That was your chance to see behind the curtain. So,
Yeah, that's nice. So here's another one. This one, Mother, you can probably answer this one. So, what was kind of like the first Disney movie or TV show that really Disney TV show or movie that really kind of grabbed your attention that maybe made an impact in your life?
Or not.
Or not.
We weren't really a big Disney fan growing up, so there wasn't a lot of Disney. One of the first movies I remember seeing was The Aristocrats at the movie theater. But the one that I think really impacted my life was Robin Hood, because that was one of the first VHS movies that we had in our house, and I loved the interaction that you guys had with the music and the cartoon and the movie, and so that gave me great joy.
Oh yeah, I remember running around. They're like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, love
And
that.
then running
Love
around.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whistle stop.
But that's seeing your children interact with Disney and movies, that brought me joy, and that was what changed my perspective with Disney, I think.
Nice.
Same question, Dad. What about you? What was a movie that like?
first movie I remember seeing was probably the first movie I remember seeing in the movie theaters, which is Mary Poppins. I remember, even though I may have only been 3 or 4 at the time, I can't remember exactly how old, but
Jackie's starting to cry right now.
Mary Poppins is my favorite character, so...
I don't have a lot of memories, but I know I was there. I know what theater I was in when I saw it, and I was aware, and I'm sure I was a restless guy and got up and down in the middle of it, but it was a memorable enough experience that I remembered it over things like 101 Dalmatians, which I also understand I saw, but, you know, that one didn't hit me, or maybe I was younger then and I don't remember it, but Mary Poppins I do remember.
Was there a scene in Mary Poppins that kind of stood out to you?
I like the cartoons probably the most. I remember actually doing the puzzle shortly thereafter that we'd gotten probably at the grocery store or something, and those were my favorite puzzles to do. Were the cartoon scenes with Dick Van Dyke leading the barn animals in Jolly Holiday. So that was my favorite scene. Animated Jungle Book. We knew that Walt was gone. We knew this was his last piece that he had worked on, and it really shined. It shined above some of the other more recent ones that maybe had less of a hand in, but as a child, I knew that excitement. It was built up. I was privy of all the advertising that Disney did, and how they built the excitement up, and products that were available then, and I was excited to go see it. Loved the music, loved, the Sherman Brothers. It was all fabulous. The characters, the story, loved that show. So, but I might say what movie impacted me more may have been Sleeping Beauty and the artistry of Sleeping Beauty, because that was done right before I was born, and so usually right after a movie came out, that was the movie that was shown. You could see the artistry and the influence of the movie in the park or in other advertising or magazines you got, and the artistry on Sleeping Beauty was so great that anytime I see that artist's work, it just immediately brings me happy thoughts.
Oh yeah, I just recently watched Sleeping Beauty, and I think you watched other movies from that time period, but that one I was like, whoa, this is at a whole new level art-wise, and just a different technique they're approaching, and as you're mentioning, I was like, oh yeah, it sticks out from the other ones in that time period, and it's unique and special in its own way. So I definitely see how you're coming from that perspective.
Yeah, the story may not be as strong, but the art of the actual animation is just extraordinary.
It's definitely a pretty movie.
Yes, it is.
All right, so we've gone into the early childhood, so we're still in that time period. But I'm curious about the Disneyland park. So your experience from your childhood of when you first went, and other experiences before we came into the picture, because there were a lot of changes to the Disneyland park, before we came, because from when we started going, what we can remember, Disneyland hasn't changed that much. So you guys saw some of those changes. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Or we'll first start off with your first memories of going to Disneyland.
Well, one of the first memories I had was standing around a circle watching the Indians dance.
Oh.
Which is
Yeah,
where?
well, do you why don't you let our audience who may not be savvy to too much Disney history, where was the Indian village?
I would say it's probably about where the Thunder Mountain.
It's actually probably more closer to New Orleans.
Yes.
Is where
It was
it
kind of in
was.
between Pirates and the Thunder Mountain.
Exactly.
Somewhere in there. They had like a big little mini stage for the presentations and
It
stuff.
was pretty much the end of the road there. That's as far as you could get around the island. Maybe the Tom Sawyer Island rafts to get on the island, but other than that, it was
So somewhere around like Splash Mountain?
not
No.
that far. There wasn't. You
wasn't
couldn't go up that
developed.
far. It
Closer
was
to
really
Thunder.
New Orleans. Pirates of the Caribbean is probably a closer.
That was the end of it.
That was it. I mean, you get the Tom Sawyer rafts maybe going in there, maybe Mike Fink keel boats, but I can't remember
So there's
exactly
no
where.
train station?
The train station was there, so yeah, that you probably could. I don't know if they moved that though in the process or whether
Okay.
it was there, but there was, there was no haunted mansion. There's nothing beyond that.
Okay. So this is still in the 60s time period, because Haunted
Yes.
Mansion came out. And
It would be the early '60s, which makes it a remarkable memory because she was, she was very young when the
3
Indians
or
were
4.
still exactly.
Right.
That's
And
After that, they got replaced by New Orleans. So Pirates took over.
Pirates took over. So what's your first memory, Father Yodeler?
It's the easiest memory to time place because I remember watching my brothers go on the flying saucer ride in Tomorrowland, where you get on the flying saucer and bounce around over a air hockey type board, kind of like they had with I don't know what they call it.
Luigi's. They tried to bring it back.
They
and
tried to
it
bring it back,
failed.
and they came back with the same problems they had back then. It's too hard to explain how to use it. By the time you may understand it, you got to get off already, and so it just never really worked as It was a fond memory, and that's probably why they brought it back, but it never really worked as far as the mass being able to understand. But I remember standing while I was too young, probably 3 years old at the time, watching my brothers on these flying saucers.
So where were the flying saucers?
Basically where Space Mountain.
Space Mountain? Okay.
Was this your first visit to Disneyland?
As far as I know, that is. I believe my parents went once in the 50s. There's pictures of Zorro fighting in our family movies.
I think I've
Zorro
seen some of those pictures.
Zorro fighting on top of the saloon and on top of the river boat, and he put on a little show for everybody there. And those were always exciting. But I think that was their 50s trip. I don't think that was my 60s trip. But it could have been, It could have been, but that's my earliest. During the 60s, we went about every other year to the parks.
Yeah. Okay. Grammy would tell us that you did not want to go into the park your first trip? Like, you were done from this road trip that you have been doing, and you were just like, I'm not having it.
Yeah, apparently I was fed up. I'm sure I dragged my feet because most of the places my parents dragged me were business related and not very interesting. Or
So you had no idea that you were going to this
I was
place.
3 years old. Did I really know what Disneyland was? No, probably not. But once I saw it, it changed totally from her dragging me to me dragging her around. So yes, that's the story she always told. Not one of the memories I have. I was too involved in the moment and probably didn't pay any attention to her.
This place is awesome!
So we've done your first experience. So how many times did you go to Disneyland afterwards? I know, we'll start with Mom. You lived in Southern California, so, was it a treat to go, or was it like, we're just going there? It's like, we're going to the park, or we're going to the beach.
No, it was a treat because we did not go very often. We went a couple times in the 70s, and it really wasn't until the early 80s where I started going, because I had wheels, I had driver's license, and I was able to drive and go there as frequently as I wanted. But that was about the time that Knott's Berry Farm was really popular, and Magic Mountain came out, and so we really didn't go very much, other than just a couple times. I mean, we went right. I remember going after Space Mountain opened up. So
yeah, you had a memory where you said you would go on with Scotty, like you guys would stay at the resort and get in early, and you would ride over and over and over.
Yes, that was before they had those stupid tickets where we could just ride whatever we wanted at that point. But yeah, we stayed at the Disneyland Hotel. That's when the monorail stopped at the hotel, and then drove us right into Tomorrowland.
Did they have the lake at that time?
There became a gap between. They actually had a building that was right up against the monorail, and then that building got torn out, and you just had the towers left, which are further away from the monorail.
Oh, okay.
But I stayed at the hotel once too when the monorail station went through the actual complex with the main, I think, restaurant and so on were in.
Okay.
The towers were still there, and they were separate from the monorail, but there was a building there where you kind of like the main building for the hotel, I think, that they had like restaurants and shops, and then you could walk right up from there into the monorail.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. So, Mom, you mentioned stupid tickets. Would you like to go into these stupid tickets?
Yeah, what are these?
Yeah, what are these tickets?
Well, I'll mention it briefly, but your father's more knowledgeable about this. But the stupid tickets we're talking about is it limits your stay. Right now, you can go in, you just ride whatever you want, as many times as you want. There's no really restrictions. Back then, you had to pick and choose which rides you wanted to ride.
And so they were categorized, weren't they?
Yes.
So it was categorized like A, B, C, D, and E?
Right. And they didn't have a lot of e-tickets in there.
Which
So,
was...
like your prime
they
rides,
the
like Haunted and Pirates and I don't know, Matterhorn, So you had to pick like which one of those rides you could ride that day.
What was a ride that you just did not enjoy?
Well, I was scared to ride a lot of rides because my mother was scared, and so if she didn't ride the ride, I didn't ride the rides. And so it wasn't until I was a teenager when I rode some of these e-ticket rides. But we always rode we did the Haunted Mansion, and we did the Pirates, and those were the ones. And the Bear Country Jamboree, I think that was an e-ticket. I'm not really sure. But those were like the top three that I remember going to. But Jonathan might have a little bit more insight to the tickets than I did. So.
Well, the tickets were there. I was the youngest of a family of 7, so I had not much influence. I remember family trying to plan out what they were going to do and who was happy with what decision and what not. I didn't have any influence hardly at all in any of those conversations, so I can't say I got too involved, but I was aware that there were discussions about what do we do with all these leftover A tickets? Who wants to ride the...
What was an A ticket?
Yeah.
You know, that's like the fire truck going up Main Street. You know, that's an A ticket. You know, or even the street car pulled by the horse. You know, that was an A ticket. So.
Or the firehouse.
Yeah. So,
Going to the firehouse. That was an A ticket.
So those were always leftover A tickets and so on because we didn't really need to do that, or they were done running for the day or things like that.
And I had heard earlier that this was to manage the lines.
Sure. I mean, it was to give some kind of spread the people out. You know, you didn't want everybody lined up for It's a Small World when it first opened up, and so you make that an e-ticket and limit it and push people to the A's and B's and C's because they want to use up every ticket that they bought to get their money's worth out of these tickets. You know,
Were lines usually like 45 minutes long, or?
well, it depends. I remember when It's a Small World was brand new, and I can remember being in a very long line to get into It's a Small World. So yes, I mean, I think similar things than we're faced with today.
Well, the newer rides. I mean,
Right.
like Bear Country Jamboree, when that first opened up, that was a long line too.
So we've talked about e-tickets and attractions. So Disneyland has changed. What attractions did you grow up with that you wish were still there, or you just remember and you think would be like they deserve an honorable mention that our viewers should know about? Like, Mother has brought up Country Bear Jamboree.
Why don't you tell us about that one?
So it was a nice little show where you can go in and sit down, and it was just, you have the animatronic animals and they sing a song they're just jamming to their little, they blow into a little
Jug.
a jug, and they're doing a drum, they're pulling a string off of a mop or something, or a broom, or, for their bass, and then they have these little, what do they call them? The heads of these other talking animals that are plaqued up on the walls. Kind of like the old
hunting trophies.
hunting trophies.
That are interactive.
That's right, and they would talk back and forth, and so it was kind of entertaining to be able to turn your head and look around and listen to the show. It kind of reminds me of the Carousel of Progress as well.
And for our listeners, those who have not listened yet, we actually do have an episode where we actually go into detail about the history, and we actually try to defend the attraction itself, at least the Disney World version. So those of you who have not listened to it, please go back and listen to us as we defend some not so popular attractions at Disney World.
And on that note, do you miss the Country Bear Jamboree at Disneyland?
Well, I watched it so many times that I'm probably sick of it now.
Did you like how they did do an overlay, which I didn't mention in the podcast, because that's the attraction that I have to defend. They did certain overlays in California to spice it up, like Haunted Mansion does Nightmare Before Christmas. They did a Christmas one, and they also did a summer vacation one. Do you remember the different versions, whether you like them?
No, I don't remember. Maybe Christmas, they maybe put a wreath or something on the antlers or something. But other than that, I don't really remember anything like what you're speaking of.
How about you, Dad? Do you remember those?
I think I saw episodes of The Wonderful World of Disney where they showed them. I don't believe we were ever in the parks at Christmas time to see it, but I do recall seeing it probably on TV from The Wonderful World of Disney.
Okay. So, Father Yodeler, do you have an attraction that you miss? There used to be a pirate ship in Fantasyland. There used to be sky buckets that went through the Matterhorn.
There's two things that come to mind. One just came up while we were talking here, and that was the Mike Fink keel boats, which were smaller boats than the Columbia or the river boat that went around the thing, and I always enjoyed them. Perhaps, unlike the canoes, you didn't have to work. And
They were a thrill attraction, right? As they sank into the water.
it didn't have any sinking, but you were required to sit down, which meant you had the option to sit down, which meant this was a good ride because you've been standing in lines for a long time. So this was a sitting ride around the long trip around Tom Sawyer Island, which was longer then than it is now.
I didn't know that, so they shrunk it.
They
down.
shrunk it down when they put in Star Wars Land.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a shorter trip now. But Mike Finn Keel boats was fun, and when they stopped doing it, I remember being disappointed. Also disappointed that they got rid of the pirate ship in Fantasyland. I always wanted to go to it.
The restaurant.
Yes, it was a
Yes.
restaurant, and my father didn't like the food they served there, so he would never take me over there. So I never really got to see it except from a distance. And it looked so cool, this pirate ship there. So I can't say I miss it because I enjoyed it. I miss it because I never got to experience it.
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity.
And those listening, feel free to, Google that. Google the pirate ship that was in Fantasyland, the Chicken of the Sea restaurant.
Yes.
It's quite a large ship
Yes,
that
it
was right in the middle of Fantasyland.
And what replaced it? Where did they put there?
I think they put Dumbo there.
Yeah,
Dumbo.
Dumbo.
They
was
moved
there.
Dumbo when they redid Fantasyland. Dumbo got pushed out in that area, so the water feature, the skull and rock, was removed, and Dumbo got put there to give it more room. And
How cool would that be? You walk through and you just see the carousel and you see a pirate ship.
absolutely,
Yeah.
that was a fact. And the sky buckets went right over it. So when we did ride the sky buckets, I'd be looking at the pirate ship and all excited about it. But the ride that I probably miss most is Mancento's journey into inner space,
I knew
where
that was
you
what I was gonna-
where you shrink. I love that every time we went to Tomorrowland, that was the attraction. It was before Space Mountain was there. I didn't experience both because I really didn't go much in the 70s. But that ride was look forward to see. You could see where people were getting on these Haunted Mansion type vehicles, and they were as real as life size. And then you got to see them as little people going through microscopes, and you could see that. And then you got on them, and then they took you through this journey, and it was just a great adventure for a young kid.
Which was later replaced by Star Tours. So
Okay, I didn't.
Yep,
know
that's where it was.
Where it was before
Yes.
that.
Yep.
Do you remember that attraction?
Yes, it was a fun one. It was up there at the top 10 rides to go into. Especially if I didn't ride the the more scarier rides. But yeah, that one, and then they had like an AT&T phone center there. That was always kind of fun to go and look at the different phones and things like that. And you could actually, go into one of their high-tech phones and call somebody.
Oh yeah, I
or-
remember those phones. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of fun to do that. That was in that same area.
You could talk to Mickey on the phone. Yeah.
That's fun.
So we'll finish up with this last question. What attraction would you bring back that's no longer there to Disneyland?
The one I just mentioned.
That one?
Or a type of it, probably not exactly like it was.
Maybe like an Ant-Man theme to it.
It could have it, but there was something much more realistic about this one. So it was
It's not realistic. Was it the quantum realm?
It was something. I mean, they tried doing it kind of in the Life Pavilion in Epcot Center with the Journey into the Body.
Oh yeah, body.
Which
horror.
was kind of a Star Tours ride, but it didn't come off the same. It was good the way it was. So I'm not sure if bringing in characters like Ant-Man would be good. This was much more of a scientific, this is really happening journey, and you were the star, because it was happening to you, and so I think you lose some of that when all your attention's drawn away to somebody else,
Interesting.
So, Mother Yodeler, would you like which attraction I haven't mentioned this one. I know this one's a favorite for you at Disneyland, the People Mover. Would you want to bring that one back, or is there another attraction you think is more deserving of bringing back from the dead?
The one I really enjoyed as a kid was the Carousel of Progress. Because it was just so fun to see these animated people, they're animatronic people, hosting the show, and we were sitting in our chairs and we were revolving around the stage, and it was just an interesting concept that you'd be on this moving platform that went around to these different time frames, and some of them it got to the point where you watched it so much you were just like laughing at some of how you're poking fun at some of them because it was like kind of goofy about it, but yeah, I really enjoyed that as a kid. Because it was cool in there, the seats were comfortable, but yeah,
Smell the vacuum tubes.
Yes.
but yeah, you could really enjoy it. You can relate to what was going on because you were in that time.
It's a great show, which is actually something you can still see at Disney World. So.
Because it's a great big...
See, the best
It's still
shows,
a great nap ride.
the best shows are the ones with chairs. You won't see me saying, bring back the 360 movie at Disneyland where you can't sit down on the floor and you cannot lean against the railings on the side. So you're stuck. You've stood in a long line to get here, and now as a young child, you have to stand during this movie. It was a great movie. Loved it, but...
You want to sit down.
I want to sit down.
Alright, so we'll wrap it up with one final question. And this is, you've experienced Disney growing up, and you've raised children, you've raised us, basically Disney, all of our life. What made you...
You brainwashed us.
You
It's your fault.
What made you want to bring us to Disney and involve that in our life?
Well, you were just along for the ride because I was bringing Disney in my life. That was nothing to do with you so much other than I could personify what I wanted as a child, because I knew that anytime we went on vacation, if a Disneyland trip was involved in that vacation, it was a great trip. Anytime a Disneyland trip wasn't, it felt like it was a long trip in the car, taking us to places that I didn't really enjoy going. But going to Disneyland in the trip, even if the trip lasted 10 days after that, the highlight of the trip was that trip to Disneyland. And so no vacation is a vacation unless it includes a trip to the Disney park, was the way I felt. So that's why you were raised that way, because if I was going on a vacation, first thing I thought is, well, can we go to a Disney park? That's where my mindset was. Because as I said, we went about every other year during while I was preteen, and then once I became a teenager, we didn't go for like 10 years because we were focused on getting my brothers to college and back and so on, and didn't go back again until I was like till my brother got his master's degree in Santa Barbara, and that gave us an excuse to go to California and go to the park.
So you're saying you only went to my wedding because you could go to a Disney park?
That was a bonus because I could go to Euro Disney and then go to Scotland to your wedding. So yeah, that's a factor.
I thought you just wanted to see me get married, but I get it now. It's got to be a Disney trip, right? That's the memorable part of the trip, right?
And you asked a question before about what attraction I'd bring back, but probably the biggest attraction I'd bring back would be Tinkerbell's Toy Shop. Because as growing up, the highlight of every trip was going into Tinkerbell's Toy Shop, which was now the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo Boutique or whatever, the princess dress-up thing between Snow White and the castle. But you went in there, and here was this Germanesque type decorated toy shop with toys everywhere, and best of all, Disney-related toys. And it was my dream come true because Mother would always say, you can pick out one toy. And that was the highlight of the Disneyland trip. So what would I bring back? I'd bring back the Tinkerbell toy shop.
To me, that scenario is an utter nightmare. You have to pick one toy. I can't do it!
There's so
Just tell me I
many.
can't pick anything and I can move on with my life.
Pretty much, yes.
All right, Mother.
Yeah, so I wanted to share you with your grandfather. He was living in California,
Yes.
which is about an hour and a half from Disneyland. So we would frequently visit him, and as a bonus, I thought would be to go to Disneyland.
It's definitely a perk that Father Yodeler here saw. He's all like, all right, we get to go to Disneyland.
Yeah.
We get to go to Disney. I mean, California, many times to visit your family as well.
I'm afraid it was incorporated going to family funerals as well.
Yes, funerals too.
Yes.
It's like, okay, we're only an hour away. Let's go to Disneyland after the funeral here.
Let's not make this a bummer trip.
So, it was kind of a nice thing. I mean, I did want to bring up one of the trips that we did. We had like a family reunion with the Hurlbeck clan, and we all went to Disneyland for a family reunion, and Japheth was 2 months old. And I thought, well, I'm bringing a 2-month-old baby to Disneyland. How hard is that going to be? But one thing that I discovered that was a comfort to me was they have these like baby centers. And I was still nursing at the time, and so I went into the baby centers, and they have these beautiful centers where you can sit and relax, get away from the crowds, it's quiet. And I was like, this is like awesome. To a mother, this was Disneyland. And I was just like, this is wonderful. They've got these little miniature toilets for little tiny kids in there. I'd never seen a toilet that small before. And they got these nice clean changing tables, kind of like when you go to the doctors, they got the papers and stuff. And then these the places where you can nurse, they're surrounded by like little miniature rooms with a rocking chair in there and stuff like that. And I just thought, this is wonderful. I wish I'd, known about this, beforehand. I guess, I would probably go there as a kid, probably, but.
If I'd known those little toilets are there, I would have gone there myself as a little kid.
I know. I was like, okay.
They are cute little toilets.
Yeah, they're pretty nice, and they do have a height restriction on those. You have to be under a certain height to go in those. But now they were called Gerber Centers at the time because they were sponsored, but now they're sponsored by like Huggies.
Yeah.
And the only bad thing about that is it's only one per park. And so, like, let's say you're over in like Toontown or Critter Country,
Right.
you got to traipse all the way down to Main Street to get there.
So
right?
you're saying there should be a family center
I think
in
Everywhere.
each park,
right.
or each lane.
Yeah.
Right. I think Winnie the Pooh ride would have been a good one because it goes in with the baby center, or Little Toontown Center for babies. Just to have more of them would have been really nice. So
Instead of having it on Main Street.
close to the entrance.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, thank you for joining us,
Yeah, it's
Father
great
Yoda, Mother.
great insight. And maybe you guys will come back and join us for future episodes.
If we're not at the park.
yeah.
Right.
Well, nobody's at the park right now.
Maybe soon.
Maybe soon.
Maybe soon. But thank you for joining us, Yodelers. We are on Instagram and we have a Facebook page. So follow us. Let us know your early memories. If you've maybe talked to your
Yeah.
parents
Talk to your
about your family or grandparents about their early memories of Disney and kind of get to know that side of Disney than what it is today. And then also email us. We're at matterhornyodlers@gmail.com.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Adios.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Matterhorn Yodelers. Please remember before your bobsled comes to a complete stop to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember,
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.